Hi everybody, welcome to Live Blogger. In this video, I'll show you how to create this animated menu items for your website. Here we can see there are 3 menu items, and if I hover over any of these menu items, so for example, if I hover over this first menu item, we have a background element behind the menu item. And if I hover over to the next element, we can see that the background element moves to the next menu item. And we also have this animation. And if I go to the last menu item, it goes over to the last menu item. So in this way, we have this background element whenever we hover over any of these menu items. So this is what we're going to design in this video using HTML, CSS and JavaScript. So let's get started. Alright, so here I have opened up this folder called Animated Menu Items inside VS Code. So let's go ahead and create our necessary files. So let's click on New File. And we'll create an HTML file, so I just name it index.html. And we'll also create a CSS file, so let's click on New File, and I'll just name it style.css. And we also need to have a JavaScript file, so let's click on New File, and I'll just name it main.js. Let's start with the index.html file. Now in VS Code, you have the shortcut where you can just press exclamation and press tab, and you'll have this basic HTML5 code. Alright, let's link our CSS file over here, so I'll just type link and press tab. And here in the href, I'll just type style.css, and in the body, I'll just link the JavaScript file. So I'll just type script:/src and press tab, and here I'll just type main.js. Alright, let's start with the markup of our menu items. So we'll create a division with a class of menu bar, or let's create a nav element and we'll give it a class of menu bar. And in that, we will have 3 anchor tags. So let's create an anchor tag, and in the href, I'll just type hash. You can type the link of your page over here. Alright, here in the anchor tag, I'll just type work for the first menu item. Now let's duplicate this and services. And for the last one, we will have about. And here we can see for the first menu item, we have this underline. So for that, we will also add a class over here in the anchor tag. So I'll just type class, and we'll just create a class called active. Alright, now let's open this in our browser. So I have this extension called Live Server installed in VS Code. So you can just go ahead and search for Live Server over here and just install it. And once you do that, you can just right click over here in the HTML and click on Open with Live Server. Alright, now let's go to our style.css file and let's start styling this. First of all, let's style the nav element. So I'll just type nav.menubar, and we'll set a padding of 8 pixels top and bottom and 32 pixels left and right. And let's also add a background color to see whether it is being applied. So here we can see we have this padding applied to our menu bar. Alright, now let's bring this to the center. So I'll just type text align and center. Alright, now let's style all these anchor tags. So let's type nav.menubar a. And the first thing we will do is we'll remove these underlines. So I'll just type text decoration and set it to none. And let's set a margin of 0 for top and bottom and 16 pixels for left and right. And let's set the font family to Roboto and sans serif. And let's set the color of the text to black. And let's also set the font size to 18 pixels. And let's set the font weight to 800. Right, now let's set a padding for these anchor tags. So I'll just have padding of 8 pixels top and bottom and 20 pixels left and right. And we'll also set the display to inline block because by default, the anchor tags are inline. Now, when you have an inline element, there can be problems in padding and margin. So it's always a good idea to add a display of inline block for all the anchor tags that are not just links. Now let's create the underline for the active element. So if you go back to our original design, we can see that we have this underline over here for the active menu item. So for that, we will use an after selector. So let's type nav menu bar a.active : after. Now after selectors are used to add extra information to your elements. So if I just type content and if I just type 123, we can see 123 is added after this element. So let's remove 123 and we need to add an underline. So we will add some width and height to this after selector, and we will position this relative to this anchor tag. So here in the anchor tag, I'll just type position relative. And here in the after selector, we'll just type position absolute. And let's set the width to 100% of the anchor tag and the height to 2 pixels. And we'll also set the background color to red. Now here we can see we have this line. Now we need to position this below this anchor tag. So for that I'll just tap bottom position to 0, and we'll set the left position to 0 as well. And now we can see we have this underline for this active menu item. And if you go back to our HTML, and if I just remove this active class from here, and if I just add it to the next menu item, we can see that now we have the underline for the next element. So I'll just move this back to the first element. Alright, now the next thing we will do is we'll create the background element. So for that, let's create a division with the class of menu bg. And let's go back to our style.css file, and we will style it over here. So let's type nav.menubar.menubg, and let's set the position of this to absolute. And we're going to set the left and the top position based on the menu items. So we're going to use JavaScript for that. But before that, let's go ahead and add a background color. And we'll set a background color of black. Alright, now we need to set the left and the top positions and also the width and the height based on which menu item we are hovering over. So let's go back to our index.html file, and here we can see we have already linked our JavaScript file over here. And we need to reference all these anchor tags and also this menu bg division in the JavaScript code. So let's go to our JavaScript file, and let's create a constant, and we'll just name it menu items. And let's type document.querySelector_all because we are selecting multiple items. And let's type nav.menubar a. This will select all the anchor tags and store them inside this menu items constant. Now let's create a constant for the menu bg. So let's type menu bg equals document.querySelector, and let's type nav.menubar menu bg. Alright, now we need to add event listeners to all the anchor tags inside this menu items constant. So for that we will use a for each loop. So let's type menu items dot for each, and I'll just call each of the menu items I. You can name this anything you want. And here we are creating this function, and in that we can access the menu items. So let's type I.add event listener, and we need to listen for the mouse over event. So I'll just type mouse over, and let's create an arrow function over here. Now what this code will do is it will go through each of the menu items and add event listeners to them with this event mouse over. Alright, now here in this function we need to get the details of these menu items. So we need to get the height, the width, and the position. So for that, let's create a variable, and I'll just name it element. And here we need to type i.getBoundingClientRect. Now this element variable will contain all the details of these anchor tags. So now let's add these details to the menu bg. So I'll just type menu bg dot style dot left, and we'll just set it to element dot x, which gives us the left position, and we'll also concatenate it with pixels. So I'll just type plus px, and then we'll type menu bg dot style dot top, and we'll set it equal to element dot y, and here let's type plus px, and then we need to get the width. So I'll just type menu bg dot style dot width equals element dot width, and let's concatenate pixels over here. And we also need to get the height. So I'll just type menu bg dot style dot height equals element dot height and pixels. Right, now let's hover over these menu items, and now we can see we have the element displayed over here, but we also need to change the color of the text. So let's go back, and here we just type i.style.color. Now this I represents the anchor tag, so let's type FFF for white color. And now let's go back and let's hover over this, and we can see still the text is not being displayed, but the color of the text has changed. Now that's because the menu bg is in front of the text. So let's go back to our style.css file, and we need to change some z index over here. So let's scroll up and let's go to the anchor tag, and here we'll just set a z index of, let's say, 2. And now we can see that the text is displayed over here. Now when we move the mouse out of the anchor tag, we need to set the color of the text back to black. So let's go back to our JavaScript file and let's create one more event listener. So I'll just type i.add event listener, and we will listen for mouse out, and let's create a function over here. And here we need to set the color of the text. So I just type i.style.color equals, and let's set it to black. And now if we hover over this, we can see that everything is working alright. Now when we move the mouse out of the anchor tag, we also want to hide the menu BG. So for that, let's go back to our style.css file, and here in the menu BG, by default we will set the opacity to 0. And here in the main.js file, when we hover over this, we will set the opacity of menu BG to 1. And when we move out of the anchor tag, we will set it back to 0. So I'll just type menu BG dot opacity and set it to 0. And we also need to type style over here. So we need to type menu BG dot style dot opacity, and we need to do the same over here as well. Right, now let's save this and let's go back to our browser and let's hover over this, and we can see that the background element is displayed over here. And if you move the mouse out of this anchor tag, we can see that the menu BG is hidden. Alright, now the last thing we need to add is the transition. So let's go back to our style.css file and let's go to the menu BG, and here we'll just type transition, and we'll set all to 600 milliseconds. And for the easing function, I just created a cubic bezier. So I'll just type cubic bezier, and for the values I'll just type 0.84, 0.07, 0.26 and 1.40, and I'll just copy the same transition to the anchor tag. So let's copy this and paste it over here in the anchor tag. Alright, now let's go back to our browser and let's hover over this, and we can see we have the transition effect. And if we move to the next element, we can see we have the animation, and everything works alright. So that's basically how you create animated menu items for your website using HTML, CSS and JavaScript. Alright, that's it for this video. I will leave the link of the source code in the description of this video, and if you have any doubts, you can ask in the comments below. And if you like this video, please click on the like button and subscribe to this channel to get the latest video updates. Thanks a lot for watching. Have a nice day.